Welcome to the Clinical Research Podcast, bringing you the latest developments in research explained by our world-leading clinicians, academics and scientists based in Nottingham. This episode is an interview with another of our research heroes, clinical research practitioner Jesse Oliver. Jesse was drawn to lab work because he liked things with a neat mathematical answer, but then COVID-19 hit and life stopped being neat and mathematical, and he's discovered that meeting patients and training colleagues can be just as satisfying.
I quite like the idea of there being definitive answers to something rather than sort of like the wishy-washiness that comes when you go and you get your English papers marked. And that was where I sort of went, right, science is going to be the route for me. But ever since I was a kid, I sat there and I went, right, what's going to be sort of my life goal? What is going to be that one sort of crowning achievement that I want? And I sat there and, I was doing first aid at the time, so it probably influenced my choice. But I said, if I could save a life, then that would be sort of my nice crowning achievement. And I feel like taking part in this study, even though I was only doing one tiny part, with the scale of how many people that's going to end up saving, I'm sort of sitting there going, all right, mathematically, how responsible am I? Mathematically, how many lives can, let's just then dish out, it's like, okay, so we've all saved on average, 2 lives each, let's say. And it's really nice to be part of some sort of groundbreaking research and to bring forward some knowledge into humanity that's never been there before. My main fascination, to be honest, has been mainly about the brain being quite a complicated organ, and how different sort of things interact with that, particularly chemicals. So that's why I went and I did a degree in pharmacology, taking a little side in neuroscience. I got a job in sterile services, and then I moved into a lab role. And from there, I've ended up moving about into laboratories until I got in a job as a research practitioner, which finally sort of moved me out from just working in the labs to actually having the patient-patient interactions and becoming more of an active role and sort of taking research less in a sort of factory-produced setting where you're only working on one small part and working in a more sort of holistic approach.
So that's coming away from the science and the nice, clean, single answer a bit in a way, isn't it?
It is. I think that, as I got older, I realized that there isn't really nice, clean answers when, there's a whole lot of nitty-gritty. And it gets to a section where you sort of realize that no matter where you look at, there's so many variable and factors that come in, that really, if you need it clean cut, I probably should have been better off going straight into mathematics or something like that.
But you're not somebody who just goes into the lurks in a lab anymore?
Not anymore. I've been moved more into that role in the past couple of months, and I'm now part of the core lab team. But even now, we still go out and recruit patients who are suffering from COVID to be part of the trials, taking their bloods, then taking them to the lab and processing them. So, which is quite nice because it's a lot different when you know where the samples have sort of come from and you're able to sort of put a face to the people who are helping out with this research than it is just sort of getting an anonymized sample with a, patient number on it.
Do you find that makes the job more satisfying?
100%. I feel like with any role, if you're only looking and working within one small part of it, it can become sort of very repetitive and sort of almost factory production line like. Whereas when you go and you see the whole research through from the very beginning to the very end, you're able to see the faces of the people that you're helping out with. At the beginning of the COVID pandemic, one of the things that I was doing was helping recruit patients to the recovery trial. And as you might know, the recovery trial ended up finding out about dexamethasone being able to sort of increase survival rates in patients who were on oxygen by something like a third, but then when you go and you look at the total death toll of COVID now, you realize just how much higher that could have been had this research not have taken place. And, being able to see the faces of patients that I've managed to get onto those studies and thinking that, there's potentially some of those people who might not have made it had they not have gotten onto the trial, it does sort of provide you a feeling like you've done something really worthwhile.
Your nomination, I don't know did you see your nomination or did you?
I did. So, that was a complete surprise to me. And my first day back was on a weekend when I was only in with one other member of staff. So, it wasn't like I could go and thank everyone right then and there. But it came quite out of the blue and quite as a big surprise. I didn't quite realize that I was, good enough to go and get a nomination as opposed to some of the other members of my team.
One of the things you started off by saying was that you like the nice kind of clean, here's an answer. And now you're getting into working with patients and training people, and it's getting less and less kind of, here's your results, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. So the way in which I ended up getting back into the labs is essentially because when I got into this research job, I ended up being put into the cardiology research team originally. And all the studies that I was doing with that, none of it involved any lab work whatsoever. And I kind of was, longing to sort of go back to it. And when COVID kicked off and we had all these new studies that came on, and they were pulling people from different areas to say, right, we need help because this is a crisis that we're needing to go and get as many hands on deck for as possible. I sort of stepped forward, and they sort of turned around and said, oh, Jess, you've had a lot of experience in the lab. Do you mind coming and helping set up this lab over in City? Do you mind helping do this, that, and the other? And then I ended up working quite closely with that, and got myself trained up into a position where I could then train other people, giving them their lab inductions, because that was something I used to do in one of my previous roles. So yeah, I sort of managed to have a little bit of callback to it and sort of realize that lab work was a bit of it was definitely something that I was missing in my role.
Are you going to go back to what you were doing before, do you think, or has the world changed post-COVID for you?
Well, we've just set up a new section in research called the Clinical Research Team, or the Clinical Research Facility, and it's going to be looking at sort of stage 1 and stage 2 drugs, so sort of very early stage research, which is quite linked into what I ended up studying at university. So they sort of turned around and said, this is a new thing that we're setting up. It's in line with some of the studies which we've previously been testing, like the recovery study. And they asked for people to move along into that team, and I sort of stuck my hand up and went, it's something that I'd be quite interested in, sort of going and being more at the sort of spear point of research, rather than sort of some of the other studies which look more in a holistic sense, rather than sort of trying to break new ground, how we can improve what's already been made.
And what are your kind of longer term plans? Where do you see yourself going? And this sounds like a job interview question, doesn't it?
I think I've really sort of discovered my love for teaching. Actually having people coming into the lab and providing the education that they need to get them sort of trained up. Sort of coming up with all the different sort of stories that,
and there must have been a lot of training
really
going on,
hammer home,
because everybody, loads of people got shifted over into roles they maybe hadn't done before, didn't they?
Have told you has been something which I've sort of found quite a passion for. So I think I'll in my future I'll probably try to move more towards a teaching role, hopefully still within research.
So that was this episode's Research Hero. You can find more of them by subscribing to this podcast or visiting nuh.nhs.uk/research. Thanks for listening. There are links in the show notes for more information on clinical research in Nottingham, and the website is nuh.nhs.uk/research. Our email and social media links are there too. If you want to stay up to date with the Clinical Research Podcast, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, wherever you normally get your podcasts. The more shows are rated and reviewed, the more search engines like them, and the easier it is for people to find us. So if you can subscribe and rate and review us, you'll be doing it for science, not just for our egos. What